On a cold Monday morning, March 26, 2018, a traveler pulled his car onto a quiet dirt turnout along California's Highway 1. The sun was just starting to rise over the Pacific Ocean. The view from the top of the cliff was beautiful. But when the traveler looked down at the jagged rocks below, his heart stopped. Down on the rocks, washed by the freezing ocean waves, was an upside-down car. It was a massive silver GMC Yukon XL. The roof was completely crushed. When first responders rappelled down the 100-foot cliff face, they expected to find a tragic car accident. They expected to find skid marks on the dirt road above. They expected to find signs that the driver tried to brake. But there were no skid marks. When investigators pulled the black box from the wreckage, they uncovered a cold reality that gave them chills. The car did not slide off the road. It did not swerve to miss an animal. On that dark morning of March 26, 2018, the heavy SUV came to a complete stop at the very edge of the cliff. The driver sat there in the dark, looking out at the ocean. Then they slammed the gas pedal all the way to the floor. The car accelerated at maximum speed, launching straight over the edge into the empty night air. Inside the metal tomb were 2 mothers and 6 adopted children. Today, we're uncovering the tragic story of Marcus, Hannah, Abigail, Devonte, Jeremiah, and Sierra Hart, 6 beautiful children who were used as props by the very people who promised to save them. If you believe these forgotten children deserve to have their true voices heard, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. We must keep these dark truths in the light so that no other child has to suffer behind a screen of lies. To the outside world, the Harts were the perfect progressive family. Their mothers, Jennifer and Sarah Hart, shared hundreds of photos on Facebook. In those photos, the children were always smiling. They were dancing at music festivals, wearing colorful clothes, and holding signs about love and peace. Thousands of people online looked at these photos and called Jennifer and Sarah saints. But the police soon realized that the beautiful internet pictures were a cover for a decade of hidden torture. The raw facts of this true crime story are brutal to process. How did a family that looked so full of love online end up at the bottom of a brutal California cliff? In the year 1999, at Northern State University in Aberdeen, South Dakota, 2 education students named Jennifer Hart and Sarah Gangler met and began a secret romantic relationship. In the conservative Midwest at the turn of the millennium, they chose to hide their love from everyone, telling classmates they were simply best friends. This was their very first experiment in double living. They discovered exactly how easy it was to present a clean, acceptable face to the public, while maintaining an entirely different reality in the dark. By 2004, the couple decided they wanted to build a family, but their entry into parenting was not through traditional adoption. They became foster parents to a 15-year-old girl named Lee. This chapter of their lives is frequently left out of mainstream reports, yet it establishes the exact psychological pattern of how Jennifer and Sarah viewed children, not as human beings, but as experimental property. For the first few months of 2004, Jennifer wrote happy posts online. She talked about taking Lee to amusement parks and camping. She wrote about saving a lonely teenager and giving her a second chance at life. But a dark, permanent shift occurred as the novelty began to fade. Lee was a teenager with her own traumatic past, her own independent voice, and her own thoughts. She refused to act as a passive prop for Jennifer's ego. Jennifer's public praise instantly turned into private bitterness. She began complaining to coworkers, labeling the teenager as difficult, ungrateful, and broken. In 2005, after just 6 months of fostering, Jennifer and Sarah told Lee they were taking her to a routine therapist appointment. They told the 15-year-old girl to walk inside and that they would wait for her in the car. They never came back. Jennifer and Sarah abandoned the teenager at the clinic, driving away permanently without a single conversation, a goodbye, or an explanation. They returned her to the foster care system like an ill-fitting piece of clothing. This was the first warning sign. Their love was entirely conditional, and any child who failed to follow their strict script would be thrown away. Jennifer and Sarah did not give up after Lee. 1 year later, they decided to try again. But this time, they wanted younger children now. They wanted children who were too small to fight back or tell anyone what was happening. In 2006, they moved to Alexandria, Minnesota, and legally adopted a sibling group of 3 Black children, 7-year-old Marcus, 4-year-old Hannah, and 2-year-old Abigail. These kids had already been through a lot of pain in their short lives. Jennifer and Sarah told everyone they were going to save them. It was during this period in 2006 that the Hart Tribe brand was officially born. Jennifer created a public Facebook page that quickly gained popularity. On the very first night the children arrived, Jennifer published a calculated post describing a home in total chaos, detailing the children having physical accidents, crying, and being completely unruly. Crucially, she ended the post with a manipulative tagline, "If not us, who will?" It was a smart trick. Thousands of strangers online started to praise her. They called her a hero. But behind the closed doors of that Minnesota house, a dark reality was growing. In 2008, the first signs of abuse came to light. 6-year-old Hannah walked into her school. Her teacher noticed something terrible. Hannah's small legs were covered in deep bruises and painful welts. The school staff took the little girl aside and asked her what happened. Hannah was completely honest, stating that her mother hit her repeatedly with a leather belt. The school immediately called the police and social services right away. Caseworkers came to the Hart home to investigate, but Jennifer and Sarah were smart. They were highly educated white women who knew how to talk to the system. Jennifer turned the blame back on the child. She told the workers that Hannah was deeply disturbed. She said the little girl was a liar and that she hurt herself just to get attention. The system failed Hannah completely. No charges were filed and the case was closed. But Jennifer was furious that her public mask had been challenged. In a tactical move to ensure she would never be questioned by mandatory reporters again, Jennifer immediately pulled all 3 children out of the public school system, declaring she would homeschool them. This single act effectively erased the children from society, stripping away the only safety net they had. Even though Jennifer and Sarah had a dark child abuse report on their record in Minnesota, the system did not talk across state lines. In the winter of 2008, they were allowed to adopt a second sibling group of 3 black children. These new kids were 5-year-old Devonte, 4-year-old Jeremiah, and 3-year-old Sierra. Now, the household had 2 white mothers and 6 black children. Jennifer knew this look was perfect for making money and getting likes on social media. In 2013, they wanted a community that matched their online image of love and peace. So Jennifer and Sarah packed up the 6 kids and moved from Minnesota to Oregon. They started going to big music and peace festivals, like the Beloved Festival. Jennifer spent hours taking photos of the kids. She dressed them in colorful, mismatched clothes, headbands, and peace signs. To the festival crowds, the Harts were a miracle. People thought they were full of love and pure harmony. Strangers stopped Jennifer on the street to call her a savior. Jennifer loved this praise. She used it to feed her online lie. But behind the closed doors of their Oregon home, life was a terrifying boot camp. The children were not dancing because they were happy. They were performing because they were scared of being hurt. Forensics and witness testimonies later revealed that food was used as the primary weapon of submission in the Hart household. Jennifer told the public the kids were on a special, healthy diet. She labeled it holistic. In reality, it was systematic starvation. The rule of the house was simple. The kids had to smile on command. They had to pose perfectly for Facebook photos. They had to hug strangers at festivals to make Jennifer look good. If they did not, they were denied food for days. The moment the camera stopped clicking, the smiles dropped. People who worked with the family felt very uncomfortable. They saw that the children would instantly become sad, look at the floor, and stand like soldiers whenever Jennifer walked into the room. In November 2014, the family became famous across the world. It happened during a loud and emotional Black Lives Matter protest in Portland, Oregon. In the middle of the crowded street stood 12-year-old Devonte Hart. He had a cardboard sign around his neck that read, "Free hugs," and heavy tears were streaming down his face. A white police officer named Brett Turner saw the weeping boy and asked if he could have a hug. Devonte reached out and wrapped his arms around him. A photographer captured that exact second. The image went viral instantly. It spread to every major news station, was shared millions of times on social media, and became a global symbol of peace. Devonte was suddenly an international icon. Jennifer immediately jumped on the moment. She wrote long, emotional stories on Facebook. She claimed Devonte's love was because of her amazing parenting. She used her son's tears to buy online fame and praise. But the hidden truth behind that viral hug was deeply disturbing. Devonte was not crying because of the protest. Investigative files later suggested a much darker reality. Devonte was a child living in extreme trauma. He was being starved, beaten, and locked in dark rooms. He was crying because he was drowning in fear. When he hugged that officer, it was not about politics. It was a desperate, silent cry for help. He was a terrified boy reaching out to any adult outside his home to save him. This world fame became a dangerous trap for Jennifer and Sarah. More eyes meant a higher risk that someone would see the truth. People online started to look closely at the photos. They noticed the children looked way too small and thin for their real ages. To protect their secret, the mothers tightened their grip. They cut the children off from the world completely. No friends, no neighbors, and no visitors were allowed. The children were trapped inside a private prison of fear where no one could see their pain. By early 2017, the child welfare system in Oregon was asking too many questions. People had called tips in about how skinny the kids looked and how scared they acted around food. Jennifer and Sarah knew an investigation was coming, so they ran away again. They moved the family north to Woodland, Washington. They purchased a large, highly secluded farmhouse situated on 2 acres of land on a remote hill. It was the perfect place to hide their crimes. From the outside, it looked like a peaceful country home. For the 6 children, it was a prison with no bars. The nearest neighbors were Bruce and Dana DeKalb, who lived in the house directly adjacent to the property. The DeKalbs were friendly, observant people who were ready to welcome the new family. But almost immediately, they saw strange things. Despite it being the height of summer, the 6 children were never seen outside playing. There were no toys in the yard, no laughter, and no noise. The heavy blinds on every single window of the Hart farmhouse remained permanently closed day and night. The house felt entirely dead and abandoned. It did not match the loud, happy life Jennifer was still posting about on Facebook. The lie was active online, but the reality was total isolation. In July 2017, the silence on the hill was broken. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Bruce and Dana DeKalb were woken up by a fast, loud pounding on their front door. Bruce ran downstairs and opened the door. Standing on his porch, shivering uncontrollably in the dark night air, was a tiny girl. She was missing her front teeth. Her eyes were hollow with fear. She was in a total panic. This child looked like she was 7 years old, but she was actually 15. This was Hannah Hart. Hannah had risked everything. In the middle of the night, she squeezed through her second-story bedroom window. She jumped to the ground and ran through the dark woods to the only house she could see. Hannah fell to her knees. She begged the DeKalbs to hide her. She cried and said, "Don't let them know I'm here." She told them she was being starved, locked in rooms for days, and whipped with belts. Before the DeKalbs could understand what was happening, 2 shapes walked up the dark driveway. It was Jennifer and Sarah. Jennifer's voice was completely calm, smooth, and sweet as she approached the porch. She smiled at the DeKalbs, casually telling them that Hannah was just having a bad moment. She claimed the girl was deeply troubled, had mental issues, and was a liar who made up stories for attention. The DeKalbs did not have proof, so they watched in silence. Jennifer led the terrified, quiet teenager back into the dark toward the farmhouse. The next day, the DeKalbs found an apology letter in their mailbox. It was signed with Hannah's name, but Dana DeKalb noticed a big red flag. The letter used big, professional words and sentences. A terrified child could not write that. Jennifer had typed it herself to cover up the damage. Dana DeKalb could not forget Hannah's terrified eyes. She began keeping a secret diary. She wrote down every single strange thing she saw at the house next door. Over the next few months, her notes got darker. On the rare days the children were outside, they did not run or play. They stood perfectly still in straight rows for hours. They were silent, waiting for permission to move. Dana also wrote down a chilling detail. The children never grew. Month after month, their bodies stayed the exact same tiny size. Then, 15-year-old Devonte Hart began making secret contact. Devonte was very smart. He waited until Jennifer and Sarah were fast asleep inside the house. Then he would slip through the thick trees. He would approach Dana when she was alone in her yard. Devonte did not ask for toys. He begged for basic food. He asked for peanut butter. He asked for raw tortillas. He told Dana that his hunger was so bad it felt like a knife in his stomach. He said his mothers took away meals for days as a punishment. He begged Dana to leave secret care packages of food wrapped in plastic. He told her to bury them under the bushes at the edge of the yard so Jennifer would not see them. Over short, whispered talks in the shadows, Devonte poured out his heart. He said life inside the house was a living hell. He said his mothers were very cruel and hated them. Just like Hannah, Devonte was 15 years old, but his body was tiny from years of starvation. He looked like an 8-year-old child. He was completely desperate. In their last talk, Devonte looked at Dana and told her they were going to die if someone did not save them. He begged her to call for help. The DeKalbs knew the truth now. The beautiful family next door was a child torture camp. They saw the starvation, they saw the deep fear, and they knew they could not stay silent anymore. On the morning of Friday, March 23, 2018, Dana and Bruce DeKalb finally made the call. They called the Washington State Child Protective Services. They gave a detailed report of everything they saw. They told them about Hannah's desperate midnight window escape, Devonte's quiet, ongoing pleas for peanut butter, the tiny size of the kids, and the military-style rows in the yard. The social workers knew this was a dangerous situation. They did not wait. That very afternoon, a worker drove out to the remote house in Woodland. The worker walked up the long driveway. She stepped onto the front porch of the quiet farmhouse and knocked loudly on the door. There was no answer. She knocked again and waited for minutes. From the porch, the worker could see the family's big cars parked in the driveway. She could hear soft, shuffling movements inside. She knew Jennifer and Sarah were inside the house, holding their breath and listening to her knocks. The worker waited as long as she could, but she did not have a warrant, so she could not force her way inside. She pulled out a business card. She wrote an urgent message demanding they call her. She slid the card right into the crack of the front door and walked away. Inside the house, the sound of that card dropping caused pure panic. The online show was over. Jennifer and Sarah looked out the window and realized their worst nightmare was here. The law was at the door, the neighbors had talked, and the kids were leaking secrets. They knew they could not just move to another state. The system was finally catching up to their lie. They had a choice. They could open the door, face the law for their years of abuse, and let the kids be saved. Or they could destroy the evidence forever. They did not call a lawyer. They did not make a legal plan. They started packing right away. But they did not pack like people planning a relocation. They threw random clothes into bags in a wild, crazy rush. Jennifer's Facebook page went totally dark. There was only the cold reality of running away. Sometime between Friday night and early Saturday morning, March 24, 2018, Jennifer and Sarah put the 6 terrified children into their big silver GMC Yukon XL. Jennifer was in such a panic that she messed up backing down the dark driveway. She slammed the big car hard into a brick wall at the edge of the yard. The crash was loud. It broke the concrete wall and left deep scratches on the side of the car. Jennifer did not even hit the brakes to check. She threw the car into drive and sped away into the dark night, heading south toward the highway. The drive was very long. They drove for hundreds of miles. They crossed into Oregon and went deep into Northern California. They stayed on the winding roads by the ocean. Jennifer stayed behind the steering wheel. Sarah sat in the passenger seat. In the back rows, the 6 children sat in absolute terrified silence. They were used to long drives, but this trip was different. There was no music, no singing, and no talking. The children were kept hidden inside the car. Jennifer was terrified of pulling over at high-traffic rest stops. She knew any stranger or police officer would see how thin and damaged the kids were. As Jennifer drove, Sarah was glued to her phone, but she wasn't looking at maps or hotels. Forensic extraction of her phone records later revealed a chilling digital search history that documented the exact breakdown of her mind during those final 48 hours. Sarah was actively researching final days methods. She searched, how much Benadryl does it take to overdose a woman of a certain weight? Can you die from an antihistamine? Is drowning a painful way to die? How long does it take to die from hypothermia in cold water? She was systematically planning execution of her entire family. On Sunday, March 25, 2018, just 24 hours before the end, they stopped at a Safeway grocery store in Fort Bragg, California. High-definition surveillance cameras captured Jennifer Hart walking through the aisles. This footage is one of the most haunting pieces of evidence in the entire case. Jennifer looks completely calm, relaxed, and ordinary. She moves with purpose, selecting bread, fruit, and basic groceries, smiling politely at the cashier. It is a terrifying look at a killer. She was playing the part of a loving mother while knowing she was less than a day away from killing her children. While Jennifer bought food, Sarah went into a Walmart pharmacy. She bought a giant bottle of generic Benadryl. Benadryl, diphenhydramine, is a first-generation antihistamine. It is primarily used to relieve allergy, cold, and hay fever symptoms. But in high doses, it causes extreme drowsiness. It can cause a person to lose consciousness. She went back to the silver car and started making the final meal for the kids. Sarah opened the bread and made sandwiches. She crushed dozens of Benadryl pills into a fine powder and hid the toxic medicine inside the food. She gave the food to the children in the back seats. 19-year-old Marcus was the biggest child, so he was given a huge amount, nearly 20 full pills. The other 5 children were fed enough medicine to make them completely dizzy and weak. It took away their ability to scream, run, or fight back. Within an hour, the back of the car was silent. The 6 children fell into a deep, drug-induced sleep. At the same time, Jennifer started drinking. She opened cans of beer. She drank heavy and fast as she drove the dark roads. She did not usually drink heavily, but tonight she was numbing herself for what she was about to do. She drove with an alcohol level far past the legal limit. In the pitch-black hours of Monday morning, March 26, 2018, the silver GMC Yukon L drove along a dark stretch of the highway in California. The road there winds along high, sharp cliffs. These cliffs drop over 100 feet straight down into the freezing, wild waves of the Pacific Ocean. Jennifer pulled the big car off the road and into a dirt lookout spot near Westport, California. She turned off the headlights. She left the heavy engine running in the dark night. In the back rows, her 6 children were fast asleep from the toxic Benadryl. They were helpless and could not wake up. In the passenger seat, Sarah sat in total silence. She checked her phone one last time, and then the screen went black forever. Jennifer shifted the car into drive. She did not hesitate. She did not slide off the road by accident because she was drunk. The car's computer box caught the terrifying truth of the final seconds. The SUV accelerated as hard as possible from a complete stop. It went in a straight line directly toward the edge of the cliff. Jennifer held the gas pedal all the way down to the floor. She never touched the brakes once, until the tires left the dirt. The heavy silver car flew into the night air. It fell 100 feet through the dark before slamming violently upside down onto the sharp rocks below. The crash was catastrophic. The metal roof was crushed at nearly 90 miles per hour. The freezing ocean water began to wash over the broken car. The show was over. The online lie had reached its brutal conclusion. When the morning sun rose over Highway 1 on March 26, 2018, a passing tourist pulled over to admire the rugged coastline, looked over the edge, and spotted the mangled silver wreckage resting on the rocks below. The tragic discovery was reported to the California Highway Patrol and fire officials that afternoon, which quickly prompted a massive emergency and recovery response to the scene. Inside the crushed front of the car, workers found Jennifer and Sarah Hart. They were still buckled into their seats. They died instantly from the crash, but the back of the car was empty. The violent crash and the ocean waves had thrown the children out of the vehicle into the wild ocean water. A massive search began. Over the next few days, the ocean began to return the bodies. The bodies of 14-year-old Abigail, 14-year-old Jeremiah, and 19-year-old Marcus were found in the water near the crash site. The autopsy reports brought a shocking twist. This was not a tragic accident. It was a mass murder. Every single child had dangerous levels of Benadryl in their blood, while Jennifer's liver tissue showed a blood alcohol level of 0.102. The search for the other 3 children lasted for weeks because the ocean waves were too strong. In April 2018, the body of 12-year-old Sierra was found floating miles away. Later that year, a person on the beach found a small shoe with a foot inside. DNA tests proved it belonged to 16-year-old Hannah Hart. She was the girl who had desperately run for her life into the night just months before. 15-year-old Devonte Hart was never found. He was the boy whose viral hug was seen by millions. The ocean is the only witness to where he rests. He is still listed as missing, presumed dead in the cold water. The police investigation showed a massive failure by the system over 12 years. 3 states, Minnesota, Oregon, and Washington, had separate reports detailing extreme physical abuse, severe malnutrition, and terror within the Hart household. But because child systems do not talk across state lines, Jennifer and Sarah found a loophole every single time the abuse investigations became too intense. They simply packed up the family, crossed a state line, and started over. By moving states and hiding the kids with homeschooling, they built a wall of lies online. They left 6 children with no one to save them. The final truth of this tragedy does not live in the broken car on the rocks. It does not live in the broken system that looked away. It lives in the quiet space left behind by 6 beautiful children.
Giving thanks for all creation, we are so provided for. We are so provided for. We are so provided for. We are so provided for.
Their real lives were stolen just for internet likes. Marcus, Hannah, Abigail, Devonte, Jeremiah, and Sierra were never allowed to be real kids. They were forced to play parts in a real-life horror movie. They had to perform on a digital stage while their bodies starved in the dark. Every smile Jennifer posted on Facebook was paid for with pure fear. Every bright headband, peace sign, and forced hug at a festival was done to get praise from a blind online world. The internet helped lock them away. Every time a stranger clicked like or said the mothers were saints, they made the prison walls thicker. The public wanted a beautiful story about love so badly that they ignored the thin wrists, the hollow faces, and the scared eyes staring right back at them through the screen. This case leaves a heavy weight that should give us all chills. It forces us to look at our world today. It asks what we are willing to give up just for online attention. The Hart children were erased on purpose. Their cries for help were treated like paperwork mistakes, moved from one state to another until they were lost. Even in death, their real stories are threatened by the online systems that use them. But we will not let their real voices be forgotten. Devonte is still out in the cold ocean, but his story must stay loud and clear. We must look past the perfect photos, past the bright lights, and past the fake joy of the internet. We must learn to see the pain hiding right in front of us. Marcus, Hannah, Abigail, Devonte, Jeremiah, and Sierra were real human beings with distinct voices, private dreams, favorite foods, and an absolute right to safety. They were not props for an online brand, and they were not tools to buy digital clout. As we close this investigation, let their names be remembered not for the viral photographs that captured their suffering, but for the urgent lesson their loss leaves behind. We must be willing to ask the hard questions. We must be willing to voice the uncomfortable suspicions. And we must never allow the glare of a digital screen to blind us to the screams of a child trapped in the dark. Rest in peace, Marcus. Rest in peace, Hannah. Rest in peace, Abigail. Rest in peace, Devonte. Rest in peace, Jeremiah. Rest in peace, Sierra. What do you think is the biggest flaw in our current child protection tracking system that allows abusers to hide by simply moving states? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep this vital discussion alive.